So this is the more advanced class from last time. This is what we need to actually build in the basement of every one of these parking garages. We should have started with this. Running out of room to draw. In one of our parking garages, we've got columns down here. We'll do an exhaust fan here, garage door there, and intake louver here. This is the system that we use in our buildings. HVAC guys throw sensors in the parking garage that sniff for carbon monoxide, diesel fumes. These guys have to kick on a fan and open a louver. And we've learned from past failures that sometimes these guys are powerful enough and get going immediately enough, and these take a little while to open sometimes. And when those guys start to fight and this isn't open enough and this guy's already sucking hard, it sucks doors shut. Kids can't open doors. It sucks so hard that the elevator doors don't open good. So this entire system is fire this after this guy has had a chance to open, based on what these are telling you. This is what we do to make all that happen. To add complexity to it, this is 3-phase 208, this is 120, and these are 24 volt. So we got to get all those guys to work together, all different voltages. So this is a ladder diagram of the control wiring. This really, as far as this ties into here, all this is saying is this is the contactor that's going to turn this fan on. So to actually run 208 through there, that's a whole, it's more ladder diagram than I've drawn here. We're just going to deal with the control wiring part of it. The ladder diagram is very confusing in the way they lay out, because this is part of this. So as far as actually wiring it, this is kind of a hot mess. But for troubleshooting, when you're trying to figure out why something's not working, this is nice and clean. You can see every wire. You know, when we have this open, nothing's going to get power. And then you can just trace it forward. Turn this on. This light's going to say everything's on. As soon as we turn this on, we've got system power. First two stops it's going to make is two different ways that we can kick things on. One is over at the panel. We throw a bypass. This is representing your sensor, remote carbon monoxide detector. You don't have a bypass switch on there. You don't really have a power light on there. But these are the functions that it's doing. When it's on, you can see your LED display. You preset the number you want it to fire at. When it does, it closes a set of contacts. We're representing that in a light turning on. You could see it by the numbers rising to the point where you know it's gonna turn the system on. And then we also need a way to actually turn the system on. So we're recreating that with this out of your sensor. You probably are just something like that, and this is what we're actually interfacing with. So we bring power in, and then we need a way to send that signal back. So we jump over from there, and now this guy, if this guy says we're too high, it's going to close the set of normally open contacts and give us back 24 volts, and then we decide what we want to do with that. So we're turning this on and creating that 24 volts, doing what we want, the same way that your actual detector would do. So, but we have to do it in here without running an engine to turn it on. So this is that detector. Either of these is able to kick power onto this wire. Okay? And you can just follow everything. You read them left to right like a book. When we do that, as soon as there's power on this, this coil is going to fire. This is the Louver coil. When we have power across that electromagnet, it's going to close this C2 set of contacts, and we've added a light. We didn't do that in years past, but it also helps for this. We close that, this light will go on saying we're opening our louver. At the same time we're sending power there, we're sending it up here to a timer. This is an on-delay timer, and we can set it to what we want. If these louvers end up taking a full minute to open like Emberwood did, we'll set it for that. I think Gateway we're open in about 10 seconds. So we'll dial it back. So as soon as we're sending power to this louver, we're sending power to the timer. And these are the things that actually draw power. So the neutral wire essentially is just hitting these bulbs, these coils, and that's easy to see when it's a ladder diagram like this. We send power to that. At the same time, we're sending power right here, and it's just sitting. As soon as the timer has reached whatever we've set it to, it'll close those contacts and it'll energize the coil for the fan. The fan will come on. Okay, all of this is the same that we're going to draw now, but that's a ladder diagram. This is a wiring diagram. This is meant to show you kind of where the components actually sit and how we're running those wires. A little harder to troubleshoot off of this, but for you to actually wire the board, this is pretty confusing. Better to take the step first here, go from that to this. So let's do this one together. And then I'm going to erase what I did and hand out this, which is the same thing. And then you draw it in, kind of like a test. Once you got that drawn right, then we'll go to the last step, which is actually running the wires between them to where we say, turn the power on. We've got power. As soon as power's on, we've got power out of these sensors. Okay, over at the panel, we can turn the bypass on right away. You got a bulb that didn't fire?
Yeah, it just blinked out. It fired in the beginning.
Yeah, I got a loose wire maybe. So we've got our bypass to do that, or we can simulate that out at the sensor. As soon as that goes off, we're closing our louver. This guy starts to count down, and when that reaches whatever we set it to, the other one kicks on. Okay? So let's draw this based on this. I think for starters,
which one is, like if you had someone send it to you, would they send you the wire or the ladder diagram?
how do you mean send it?
Like if you asked someone, you didn't know what you're doing, you said, hey, can you send me how to do this on like a pen, like a book? Would they send you the ladder or would they send you the wire diagram?
This is the way
It's easy
everybody's
to
brain
think,
seems to work.
and
I think
that's
this
the way
is,
that they send it to you, if you would ask for it.
I think you would get it this way.
Okay.
This breaks everything apart, and in some ways makes it more confusing. And some people just stay away from these because they are confusing, and you have to understand how they relate to each other.
Right.
But if you end up trying to actually troubleshoot something, you're going to really like being able to read this,
Right.
because
I see what you're saying.
you don't have to follow every wire in and out and try to understand what that wire's doing. You can just see it very clearly, and you can follow it and say, if this is connected, now I've got power coming down here, and you go to here, and you can say, this is my issue. So it's very helpful for that, but it is messy otherwise. So I think you would communicate through this mostly. I want to start with neutrals and just get it out of the way, and it gets a lot of our circuits half done. So we know all of these lights are going to need a neutral. This guy's going to need a neutral. These are the coils, and the direction you get. I mean, when this is done, and you can see I started with that at first, keeping things nice and clean. Then we ended up with the wrong relays, and so I had wires just hanging there and just threw them in. This is kind of messy. Ideally, everything's nice and straight, but the direction you go and how you get there, you decide. Okay, all we know right now, I need to get a neutral to this because I'm trying to send 24 volts to it. These guys need a neutral. Those are going to need a neutral. This timer, this is a contactor in there, and this one is that neutral. Let me come up this side. Okay, and then the route you take with this, really up to you. Let's do that. I would suggest probably drawing it the way you're going to wire it and wiring it the way you drew it, just so you don't add a layer of complexity to it. Let's run our 24 volt wire on then. Got to start right there. Everything else on this board has to come from here. We grab anything here without thinking. We've just energized that. Even if we try to shut the entire system down, we still have power going to that. So everything from this point on is going to be powered from there. That's this wire. So now we can use that and say, I can hit both of my auxiliary switches. Those both need that circuit. I got to hit this bypass, and we got to get power to this light and to that bypass switch. So this guy and this guy, and you can see how they're both getting this switch side of the system on, and this guy. Okay, got my power switch in both of those, and I already hit both of these, and I've got to get to that power ball. This guy's the one saying we're live. Okay, so it's already getting messy, and I guess when I look at it, this seems cleaner to me to follow stuff. Alright, this one's good. Let's take and throw these in from C1, which is our exhaust fan contactor. We're going over and turning on this light that says the exhaust fan's on. Exhaust fan contactor. We're sending power to this side. When this fires, it's going to pull this closed. This. It's going to turn that one on. That's going to turn that one on. Let's start up here. Come out of our bypass, and we have to hit the timer coil and the louver coil. And we have to jumper from the timer coil to the side of the normally open contacts. And I didn't draw that in here, but that's what these are. These are your, we'll do that. Should have had that up. Alright, so we're coming out of the system bypass. We have to hit this coil. We have to jumper that so we got power positioned and ready to come off of this switch. We're not going to jump over to this with this line because this guy's got to wait. But we are turning this on the second we're turning this on. Okay, we close that switch. We're turning the timer on immediately. This is just sitting here waiting. This came on immediately. Then once this is counted down, however long we tell it to, it'll close this circuit. Common and normally open is what I wrote there. It'll send power out of here. And we want that to turn that contactor on. Okay, and we also need this sensor to do all this same stuff. So we've got power sitting right here. When we close that, we want that to turn this little light on, telling us we're turning stuff on. We also need to tie it in with the rest of this. And it doesn't matter for us that when we close this, we're sending power all the way to this, or if this was off, power sitting there. It's the same wire, and really, this is just representing the system is turning on. Okay, so all of this is tied in together, and I don't know if we have anything still to draw. All right, so confusing, but I think you're going to learn more if you have to draw it rather than just simply copy it in.
So it all starts with your power system.
I'm going to leave this here so you can still follow stuff.
Right.
But don't even use this more than you have to,
Right.
and force your, go through a thought process like I did, even if you do it in a different order. It's easy to, without thinking, start saying I got power into here, and then this is going off, and then you come back later and say, this needs to be a neutral. What was I thinking? So that's one of the reasons I either get those on first or do something that says that I know what that screw is already. I'm not worried about those, and start following your lines through. All right. Will you hand
Sure.
those out, or these out, or hand those out? Hey guys, these are your neutrals.
Go together.
Every one of these. Okay? Coming across, it's hitting this guy too. You can follow this and say, here's every place that I've got to get my neutral to.
Where's the H2 or A1?
8-2 is the neutral, but either one will work.
Don't know.
Relay timer.
Don't know.
Let's go through it on here, and some of it you already have. Some of it you can adjust as we go. All right. Again, I'm going to start with my neutrals. I need that here. I need that on these two. And I need it here. Okay. All the neutrals are done. Now let's take this hot. Come up there. Everything is after that. When this turns on, we want that light to come on. This seems redundant. This is remote. This is 300 feet away on a column. So over at the panel, we can turn it on and see systems live. This is a long ways away, but this light's doing the exact same thing. When that system comes on, we've got power out there. This is starting to sense. Okay? We want to power this bypass right off of this main line, right after this first switch. This is that first wire. We also are hitting this bypass. Okay? You also can see at the bottom, we're hitting both of these auxiliaries. Okay? I think that's everything for that wire. Maybe. All right. When the louver contactor goes, it's going to close this auxiliary. I forgot you guys are going to try to fill in your papers as I'm going, so I may be flying right now.
I can fill it in at the end.
Fill it in and then you guys fill yours in. All right, sorry about that. When a louver contactor fires, it's going to close this switch. We want it to turn on that bulb. So it's going to turn on the louver bulb. When the exhaust fan coil sucks in, we want to turn on the exhaust fan light. Okay? If we bypass and just kick it on, we're going to kick the timer on. We're going to close the louver immediately. When the timer says so, it's going to send power to that. But right now, we don't have anything feeding it. We need to jumper this guy just so that we have 24 volts sitting here to send somewhere. So we're just going to jumper those two screws together. And where you attach is up to you. You can have a bunch go together, but now you got a wire nut or a waggle in the middle of things. Ideally, your wires are nice and clean, and you don't have a bunch of spaghetti knots. Okay, we can throw the system on right here, but we need the sensor to do it. We don't want to just bypass it. When this sensor kicks on, it's going to turn that little light on, tell us that it's on. And then we also need it to kick the system on. Okay? It was quick, but I'm not seeing anything that got missed. So, try to get all the wires in and drawn and ready, and then let's start switching over to the board.